Have you ever looked at your dreams and felt excited for a few moments, only to return to the same habits that keep you stuck? Have you ever promised yourself that tomorrow would be different, but when tomorrow arrived, nothing changed? If you have ever felt full of potential but trapped by procrastination, this story is for you. And by the end of it, you may never look at your life the same way again. Once upon a time, in a peaceful riverside village surrounded by hills and thick forests, there lived a young man named Arjun. He was the son of a famous potter who had once created the finest clay work in the entire region. Travelers from distant towns used to visit Arjun's father just to buy his handmade pots, lamps, bowls, and decorative vases. His work was so beautiful that people said his hands could turn simple mud into treasure. Before his father passed away, he left Arjun three things: an old clay workshop, a spinning wheel, and a dream. "My son," his father had whispered weakly, "one day this workshop can become greater than mine ever was. But only if your hands learn to work when your mind wants to rest." Arjun never forgot those words. As he grew older, he often stood outside the workshop, imagining his future. He would tell the villagers proudly, "One day, merchants from every kingdom will visit my workshop. My pottery will be worth silver and gold. My name will become legendary." The villagers admired his ambition, but behind his confident words hid a dangerous weakness. Arjun loved dreaming about success, but he hated beginning. Every morning, sunlight entered the workshop through the cracked wooden windows. Dust floated through the golden light, while the silent pottery wheel waited patiently in the corner. Arjun would walk inside, stare at the clay, and sigh. "The clay is too wet today," he would say. The next day he would complain, "The weather is too hot." Another day he would mutter, "I'm not in the right mood." And every evening he comforted himself with the same sentence, "I'll start tomorrow." Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Cobwebs spread across the shelves. Clay dried and cracked in forgotten buckets. The once proud workshop slowly became lifeless. Meanwhile, other craftsmen in the village improved their skills every day. Blacksmiths hammered iron from sunrise to sunset. Farmers tended their crops patiently. Carpenters shaped wood with discipline and care. But Arjun spent most of his days sitting near the river, imagining a future he never worked toward. Sometimes he watched successful merchants ride through the village and whispered to himself, "One day, that will be me." Yet deep inside, he feared something. He feared failure. He feared creating something ugly. He feared discovering that he wasn't truly talented. So instead of trying and failing, he chose to delay and dream. One evening, during the rainy season, an old woman arrived in the village. Her name was Mira. She was known across many towns as a master potter, whose creations were displayed in royal palaces. When she heard that the son of the legendary potter still lived there, she decided to visit his workshop. The rain poured heavily as she stepped inside. Her eyes slowly scanned the room. Broken clay, dust-covered shelves, unused tools, and in the middle of it all stood Arjun, embarrassed and silent. Mira walked toward the spinning wheel and touched it gently. "This wheel hasn't moved in a long time," she said quietly. Arjun forced a laugh. "I've just been waiting for the right time to begin." Mira looked directly into his eyes. "The right time?" she repeated. "Yes," Arjun said confidently. "I want my work to be perfect. I don't want to waste clay making bad pottery." Mira remained silent for a moment. Then she bent down and picked up two lumps of clay from the corner. One lump was soft, fresh, and smooth. The other was dry, cracked, and hard as stone. She placed both pieces into Arjun's hands. "These are not just lumps of clay," she said. "The soft clay is your dream. If you shape it daily, even imperfectly, it slowly becomes something beautiful and valuable." Then she pointed to the cracked clay. "But this one is delay." She pressed the hardened clay into his palm. "The longer you wait, the harder your dream becomes to shape. Eventually, even your own hands won't be strong enough to change it." Arjun looked away awkwardly. "I'll start tomorrow," he whispered again. Mira smiled sadly. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "is where most dreams go to die." That night, thunder echoed across the village. But Arjun could not sleep. For the first time, his excuses sounded empty. He remembered all the years he had wasted imagining success instead of earning it. He remembered how many times he had promised himself change, and deep down, he realized something painful. He wasn't waiting for the perfect moment. He was waiting to feel comfortable. Before sunrise, Arjun rushed into the workshop, determined to finally begin. His heart pounded as he sat before the spinning wheel. His hands trembled while he pressed fresh clay onto the center. He spun the wheel. The clay collapsed instantly. He tried again. The pot folded inward awkwardly. Again, the sides cracked. Again. The entire shape broke apart and splattered across the floor. Hours passed. Failure after failure. By midday, frustration consumed him. He stared at the ruined clay and shouted, "Maybe I'm not meant for this." In anger, he kicked the bucket and stormed out of the workshop. For 3 days, he refused to return. The fear inside him grew stronger. At least before trying, he could still pretend he had talent. Now he felt exposed. When Mira returned and saw him sitting hopelessly by the river, she sat beside him quietly. "I failed," Arjun muttered. "No," Mira replied calmly. "You finally took the first step." Arjun frowned. "But my pots were terrible." Mira nodded. "Of course they were terrible. Every master once made terrible work. The difference is that masters continued." Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small wooden board with 3 short lines carved into it. She handed it to him. "1," she said, "make it small. 2, create easy routines. 3, remain consistent with the first 2. Arjun stared at the board silently. Mira continued. "When people chase huge dreams, their minds become overwhelmed. They imagine climbing an entire mountain in one leap. Fear and laziness take over." She pointed toward the workshop. "So don't try to become the greatest potter overnight. Just make one small pot each morning." "Only one?" Arjun asked. "Yes," Mira said firmly. "One small pot." Then she raised a second finger. "Create easy routines. Do not depend on motivation. Motivation changes like weather. Instead, build habits that become automatic. Wake up, wash your face, enter the workshop, shape one pot every single morning." Finally, she raised her third finger. "Be consistent. Some days you'll feel inspired, some days you'll feel tired, some days your mind will beg you to skip. Ignore all of it. Continue anyway." "In the beginning," she said, "you must carry discipline yourself. But eventually, discipline begins carrying you." Something inside Arjun shifted that day. The next morning, he did not try to create a masterpiece. He simply shaped one tiny bowl. It looked crooked and uneven, but he finished it. The next morning, he made another, then another, and another. Some cracked while drying, some collapsed completely. Some looked so ugly that he wanted to smash them immediately. But he remembered Mira's rule: never stop. Weeks passed. Slowly, his hands began learning what his mind could not. His fingers became steadier. The clay stopped collapsing as often. His movements became smoother. Most importantly, the workshop was no longer silent. Every morning, the spinning wheel turned again. Villagers passing by noticed the change. "Arjun has finally begun working," they whispered. Months later, he sold his first small clay bowl at the village market. The payment was tiny, but to Arjun, it felt greater than gold. Because for the first time in his life, he had earned something through consistency instead of imagination. That single bowl changed him. He began waking earlier. He worked longer, not because someone forced him to, but because momentum had awakened inside him. 1 year later, his shelves were filled with beautiful pottery. 2 years later, merchants from nearby towns began placing large orders. 3 years later, wealthy traders traveled across rivers and mountains to buy his creations. The workshop that once gathered dust now glowed with life from sunrise until night. Rows of elegant pots lined the shelves. Decorated lamps hung from wooden beams. Beautiful vases dried carefully in the warm sunlight. And in the center stood Arjun, no longer lazy, no longer afraid. Years passed. His pottery became famous across distant kingdoms. Kings displayed his work in royal halls. Travelers spoke his name with admiration. The young man who once delayed everything had become the greatest potter his village had ever seen. But the true transformation was not the wealth. It was the discipline he built through small, daily actions. One evening, a young boy entered his workshop nervously. "Master Arjun," the boy said, "how do I become successful like you?" Arjun smiled gently. He picked up the same wooden board Mira once gave him. Still carved into it were the three simple rules. 1. Make it small. 2. Create easy routines. 3. Stay consistent with the first two. The boy looked confused. "That's all?" he asked. Arjun nodded. "That's all greatness ever is." Then he placed a lump of clay into the boy's hands. "Dreams are like clay," he said softly. "If you shape them every day, even imperfectly, they slowly become your future. But if you keep waiting for perfect conditions, your dreams harden into regret." Dear listener, your life is no different. Your dream may not be pottery. It may be fitness, a business, a YouTube channel, studies, writing, money, confidence, or becoming the person you know you could be. But the truth remains the same. Big dreams are not built in giant moments of motivation. They are built in tiny daily actions, repeated consistently. One workout, one page, one video, 1 hour, one small step repeated again and again. Do not wait until you feel ready. Do not wait for perfect conditions. Do not wait for tomorrow. Tomorrow has stolen enough dreams already. Start while you are uncertain. Start while you are imperfect. Start while you are afraid, because action creates confidence, not the other way around. Remember this: the spinning wheel of your life is waiting, and every day you delay, the clay becomes harder to shape. But if you begin today, even with one small step, your future can still become a masterpiece. You do not need perfection. You only need movement. And sometimes, one small daily action is enough to completely reshape a life. Remember this: most people spend their lives waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect opportunity, the perfect plan, the perfect feeling. But just like Arjun discovered, perfection never comes before action. It comes because of action. Every masterpiece begins as a lump of clay. Every success begins with a small step. Every great life begins with a decision to start. So ask yourself, what is the one small pot you need to make today? Because a year from now, you'll either have a shelf full of progress or a workshop full of excuses. The choice is yours. If this story inspired you, make sure to click the subscribe button, where we share powerful stories that help you build discipline, confidence, and a better life. Until next time, keep shaping your future, one small step at a time.